Hey everybody, this is Doug Mark, president of Learning Zen, and we're here with 5 franchising questions with my guest, Marla Rosner. And Marla is the senior learning and development consultant with MSA Worldwide. Marla, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I've been in contact with Marla for years. We hadn't seen each other for a while, which was kind of a nice way to start this meeting, be able to see each other face to face and hear a little bit about how things are going on in our personal lives. I was wondering if maybe you could kind of share with our audience a little bit about MSA Worldwide, what it is that you do and how you kind of support the franchising community.
Sure. We are a franchise consulting firm, and perhaps one of the longest standing firms. We have a variety of services. We serve both emerging franchisors and mature established franchisors. And of course, they have different needs.
Yeah.
So for emerging franchisors, and often these are folks who have operated anywhere from 2 locations to 10 locations on their own, and now they want to franchise, we will work with them on developing their, I'll call it go-to-market, meaning go to the franchise market strategy. And that involves really thinking through all the elements of how their business strategically is going to move into the franchise arena. Who are their franchisees going to be? How are they going to access them? Everything about, royalties down to operationally their supply chain, et cetera. And are they ready? And we advise on that score, and then work closely with their attorneys to help shape those franchise agreements, et cetera. And then my role with the company is to work with our clients on documenting their businesses, which, as you know, is core to their replicating their businesses, as well as developing training programs for them to deliver to their new franchisees, and developing means, how to give to their franchisees a means of training their employees. So, and that's the emerging franchisors, and then for established franchisors who may want to, for example, expand internationally or come from another country into the U.S., we help them work out that strategy. We may also be working with established franchisors on transitions of their legal agreements and how to, what that means to their existing system and franchisees, and all those kinds of issues that might come up for an established franchisor. We're there for them as advisors. So that's MSA Worldwide.
Well, that is a really great description of what you all do, especially what you do in particular for them, which is something that is obviously near and dear to what we do here at Learning Zen.
Yeah.
And really any franchise brand, because I think so much of it starts with that initial training of the franchisees. So that in-person time that they get with you, and then they've got to take that back to their individual stores and sort of be able to replicate that for their own employees. And so I think you do one of the most critical things. I mean, I might be a little biased being in the training space, but thank you for what you do, and kudos for what you do, because it's one of those things that flies under the radar sometimes until you really think about, oh yeah, everything moves because of training. So
well, and I do a presentation at franchise expos about training in the franchise space, and I title it the DNA of franchising.
Yes,
because this is the core of replicating the business. So that, and I think what, particularly with emerging franchisors, it's a dawning realization that, this is a key component of my successful franchising.
Yep, and I've got to get that key component available to all of my my unit owners. So
yeah, right.
Well, that's amazing. And you mentioned, some of the presentations you do. I know we see you at some of the franchise conferences and certainly IFA. And my next question is a direct quote from the IFA, which will be a fun one. So I'm going to repeat, but basically the International Franchise Association described MSA as the leading strategic and tactical advisory firm in franchising, which obviously massive praise there. What do you think? What do you personally think is it that makes kind of MSA Worldwide the best advisory firm?
Yeah. Well, I think there are two things. One is that we don't, we're not a cut and paste firm where we have a template and, clients come to us and we kind of hammer out that cookie cutter franchise strategy. We are very nuanced in working with our clients about their unique business goals, and weaving that into the strategic advising that we do with them. So there's that. I mean, even down to documenting businesses, I have a lot of folks say, oh, well, you've got a template you just fill out, right, for the operations manual, and assume that there's, we're filling in the blanks.
That everyone does it the same. No.
Yeah. There is tremendous customizing that we do. And I think we go further than that, than anybody else. And the other thing is the team of people that we've assembled are really, really experts, have had experience as franchisors, franchisees, combination, and we are, consulting is a skill in of itself, and we're good at that. We're really good at that, and we listen really closely to our clients' needs, and seems like we're doing a pretty good job of meeting them over the years. Yeah.
Well, that's so great to hear. The listening component is one that truly resonates with me. I think a lot of time I'm in the sales space, and there's oftentimes sales folks that aren't great listeners, and that becomes a real frustration. But imagine, being a business owner where you're going to go work with a franchise development firm and it feels like they're not listening. And that's really tricky. I will tell you a neat comment that was relayed back to me when I, reached out and said, have you worked with MSA Worldwide? And one of the comments was that this is an extremely professional shop that will not franchise a business if they are not ready to franchise that business. And that is something that really resonated with me, because there's a lot of companies out there that will take your money and offer to franchise your business if you're not ready, whereas MSA will tell you that you're not ready, and how do you go get ready? So that is just a quick little compliment to you and your team.
That's great. Thanks. I will pass that on. Thank you.
Please do. Please do. So what's interesting is we have so many unique personalities in franchising. Like you follow Red Boswell, he's out shooting videos right now from, I think he's in Utah, climbing through the Narrows. And we just have all these amazing characters in this space. And it ends up being a lot like a family. But what is it that sort of drew you personally into the franchising space? Like what was it you loved about franchising?
Well, it's been a long time that I've been in franchising. So I was, it's funny, this is going back to my youth. So in my 20s, I was working in social service. I had a good friend who was a little ahead of me professionally, and, knew I liked working with groups, and said, you should move. You should be a trainer. You like working with groups. You're really good at that. And then I started back in the prehistoric days when you would look at the newspaper for ads, for job ads.
And there,
I saw this one that wanted a trainer. It was a little mysterious. The company was EMRA, and that turned out to be Supercuts. A corporate office, entity name for Supercuts. Got that job, and I will tell you the really kind of embarrassing part of it was that I had to have a friend twist my arm to take the job, because franchising, like a lot of people, do have this misconception about franchising. I had all those. It's like McDonald's, I don't like their hamburgers. I love their fries, but it's like,
Right.
and also I confess I was a bit of a, anti-establishment hippie in those days. And I thought corporate America, oh, I don't know. So I had to have a friend twisted my arm, try the job.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you don't have to stay there forever. 16 years later with Supercuts, I was vice president of training and loved it, grew. I feel like everything I know, I learned at Supercuts.
Yeah.
And it's just a fantastic model.
Yeah.
And then what has been fabulous for me in terms of my professional growth has been working with MSA Worldwide, taking my learnings from working inside of a franchise and applying it across all these different niches, as you know, all these different industries. So, everywhere from elder care to child care and recreation and auto and on and on and on.
Well,
yeah.
Wow. I really appreciate your honesty in that answer, because you might have seen me raise both hands at one point, because it's interesting. You touched on something that doesn't happen very often in these interviews, which is that weird connotation sometimes people have with franchising. And I shot this video called The F Word, but it was not the F word that we all don't want our children to say. It was the word franchising, because some people did have that sort of, I call myself a snob at times. I'm like, oh no, I'd much rather support a local business or a small business owner. And oh my goodness, did it come, the realization that all franchisees are small business owners was mind-blowing for me. And at the same time, here I am traveling all over the world, implementing learning management systems and going to franchise conferences. And what do I gravitate to when I'm on the road? Something that feels familiar, friendly, all of these F words, franchise, and I'm like, this is what happens. I go out and I'm in Chicago and I'll hit a place that I know and love. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm back at home again. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand, is that these are independent, these are small business owners like you and me, that maybe they were not, entrepreneurs, but they had an entrepreneurial spirit, and all they really wanted was some sort of system that they could follow, but they wanted to control their own destiny. And so I'm right there with you. And that's so nice to hear from someone else in this space, because I hadn't heard it in all of my That's awesome.
We all live and grow.
We do, exactly. And we mature, and we learn. We learned what franchising really was. And wow, what a support system you get when you get into franchising. It's absolutely, it's a huge family.
It is.
If you need help, you just ask for it, and people come out of the woodwork to help you. So it's really quite special, and something that I know we're going to stay in forever, because this is a really great space to work in.
Yeah.
It's also a great space to be evolving right now. I mean, a lot of people had a lot of time to sit back and reflect over this last year about what they do and don't want to do. And a lot of people don't want to work for a company that's going to lay them off. They'd rather control their own destiny. So they very well may be a new franchisees moving forward, where they do get to control their own destiny a little bit. And that's exciting. So,
right.
Well, sticking in this little IFA sector, I learned that you're the chair of the IFA Social Sector Franchising Task Force. And I want to know more about what that is. Can you tell our audience what it is?
Sure. It's a mouthful to start with, I realize.
Right. I had to read it.
And I'll abbreviate it. The Social Franchise Task Force, under the auspices of the IFA, was started, gosh, I want to say maybe 15 years ago now, 12 or 15 years ago, by Michael Seid of MSA. And he led the way for the IFA to look at how we could help social entrepreneurs and mission-driven organizations in underdeveloped countries, actually aiming at what's called the bottom of the pyramid, the poorest of the poor.
Yes.
How could we support programs like that with our commercial franchise experience? How could we help them. Basically what we've come to is our goal is to help them expand their footprint using, to whatever extent possible, the methods that have been so successful for commercial franchisors to expand their footprint. So
Wow.
it has been a very interesting period of talk about learning.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot about the conditions in which some of these programs work. We have mentored a large handful, I want to say maybe 20 or so of these organizations in the last, I want to say 5 or 6 years, where we match IFA professionals, in particular with background in operations, match them with who we feel would be good candidates to expand their footprint. For example, they need to already have a couple of operations going. So,
Right.
just like we would say in commercial franchising, ideally, you've already got practice expanding at least once. You've got at
Right.
least 2 locations. 3 or more, that's even better, because it means, you've got some solid operational practices that you can replicate. So what we look for are social enterprises, mission-driven businesses, or non-governmental organizations, NGOs, who are already operating on the ground with 2 to 3 locations and are interested in scaling further. And we work with them to help them understand what the methods of franchising are, and helping kind of look with them about what could be appropriately used to expand their businesses. And for example, we have an accelerator coming up in October where we work with the University of New Hampshire, who we've been working with for a few years to put on these programs.
Go Wildcats.
Here you go. And we'll be running webinars and assigning social franchise advisors from pre-selected folks in the IFA.
I had no idea.
I know.
I asked that question that is what this was. I am a little taken aback, surprised. I'm excited. This is something that I would like to get involved with. So hopefully somebody else is watching this right now saying, that's really cool. I would like to get involved with that.
Yeah.
Because,
hey, www.socialsectorfranchising.org.
okay,
and,
we're gonna put that up.
Or just email me if that's an option, and we can get you on a mailing list. And there are FAQs on the site about social franchising and about the task force. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm blown away. I had no idea, and it takes a lot to wow me. So that's really cool. Seriously, I'm going to go there, and next year at this time, we can both be talking about this.
Outstanding.
So
great.
Count me in.
Yeah. Fabulous. That's great.
Wow. That is really fun. We've obviously been through a really weird stretch of time here, I feel like. And I know a lot of people's businesses were affected. Some people did really well in the pandemic. Others really struggled at times. But how did, COVID rearranging all of our lives really affect the work that you do? And, can you do this remotely? Did we take any great takeaways from it?
Well, interestingly, in my role, I have done the lion's share of my work remotely over the years for MSA.
Okay.
What I'm doing is I don't generally, sometimes we do this, go into a location and start taking notes. What are your processes and procedures? But what I've learned is that coming in like that as an outsider, you can capture so much. Mostly someone who's franchising their business either is the one that knows every nuance, or has somebody else who's in charge of operations who knows every nuance.
Right.
So what we do as consultants is know what questions to ask of those experts and drill down either in in interviews or just in emails, and cull from them what we need, and then do a lot. What has changed is, even though we might have used a, say, GoToMeeting platform in the past, the use of Zoom now as a household item has really transformed the communication with clients. And so that's been fun. That's been great.
Good.
It just feels like it deepens the relationship.
Yeah, I definitely think tools like that have allowed us to stay more connected to our communities. And, I heard stories at the virtual IFA this year about franchisees meeting in the morning with franchisors and telling them about everything they're dealing with, like what happened yesterday, because it wasn't like it was week to week, it was day to day. And sometimes it was hour to hour. And I think platforms like Zoom and GoTo and even online training platforms allowed you to have more collaboration, I feel like, between the owners and the franchisor. And that's good. Anytime there's more collaboration, I think that's always great. So,
and we got that feedback from our clients, our franchisor clients also. The intensity, the frequency, and the productivity of the franchisor meetings just, really grew and exploded. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's actually led to more collaboration moving forward, even, with the lessons learned there. We learned that the more that we do communicate, the better all of our operations move forward. And so I think there will be some positive takeaways from this, which is good.
I fully agree. Absolutely. And I think what's one of the things that's interesting as it relates to online learning is people, I think, have just made a quantum leap into being on a screen, getting at least just even webinars have gotten far more increased use. People are just more comfortable jumping in on those. So hopefully that continues. We've had one client at least who started doing their franchise sales via, distance on Zoom, and it happened and it worked and it's turning out fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I think some things really did improve and do great. I can personally say that I struggled with like virtual conferences a little bit because, so much of the conference is about getting together with people face to face and sharing a drink or a meal or something like that. So I'm obviously so thrilled that we can finally see people in public again and give out those hugs we've been storing up for a year and a half.
Absolutely.
But we did. We learned about some great tools. We learned about the fact that, online training is accessible. It's something everyone can do now, which is great. And so you're right. There's so many good things that we have taken away from this. And that's always the important thing, is learning. Again, if we got through all of this and we didn't learn anything, then it was all for nothing.
Yeah, right. That'd be really bad.
Exactly. Let's celebrate the fact that that's not the case here. So, well, I know you feel very strongly about leadership and development. Do you think that training and empowering the franchisees is kind of the best path towards like more unit success and profitability?
I absolutely do. And I think some of the really successful franchisors recognize that this is the DNA of replicating their system. And they embrace it, they invest in it, they have somebody internally who owns it. Now, those tend to be the more, mature, established franchisors, because there is a growth curve.
Yes.
And early on, there may not be the budget for that. So we find a lot of our clients are in that early stage, and we're kind of working to build a path
Yes.
so that as soon as it's possible, they can invest more and more in training.
Right. Having the budget and the infrastructure for that
Yes.
is not something that every emerging brand has.
Right.
But most of the established ones do. And
Right.
oftentimes they get to that point because they invested heavily in leadership and development. So,
Right.
oh, that's awesome. What a great answer. So this is one that a question that really is intriguing to me, but that's, if a brand is working with a limited budget, are there some ways they can still be invested in training while remaining fiscally responsible?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. So, of course, as you know, one of the challenges in franchising is the issue of co-employment
Yes.
and co-employment liability, and keeping crisp lines to not delve into employee management when you're the of the franchisee's employees, when you're the franchisor. We take the approach that let me restate, some attorneys will say, do not touch employee anything.
Right.
But for a franchisee to really effectively train their employees, they already are wearing a dozen hats.
Yes.
So our position is they do need to be handed training. And then, for example, you tell me, in your case with Learning Zen, my understanding is that as long as it's the franchisee that is sort of turning on the training for their employees, that keeps them at arm's length from this co-employment issue.
Yeah, no, you're actually bringing up something that is a huge selling point to Learning Zen, is that we do have that baked into Learning Zen, is that we have a clear separation between franchisor, franchisee, and their management and their staff. Mm-hmm. And right, the thing that kind of separates and insulates the franchisor is that they have the ability to create the material, and the material can be for the franchisee, for the owner. It can be, end employee level, or even like it could be server level training that they've built. As long as they aren't the ones who are assigning that out to the employees at the unit level, they are protected and insulated. And so how we handle it at Learning Zen is that we actually, when somebody logs in as an owner or franchisee, they get this elevated role that allows them to only oversee their own unit and assign that training and track it all. Even though you have insight into what's going on, you're not the person who's doing the assigning. And so it's that assignment of the training that protects them a little bit. So
yeah. Well, you asked about, we got to this because of the low budget question. What does a new franchisor do who may not have the budget? And what we encourage them to do and do for them in many cases is develop what would be considered old-fashioned employee training manuals.
Yeah.
At least let's start with documenting what are the processes and procedures for an employee in a designated role. Give some of the general outline of what their day looks like, what their tasks are. There's training in there.
Yes.
And then it's up to the franchisee to implement that training. But the other thing we do that, in my mind, starts walking them down a path towards e-learning one day is to give them the option to put that into the form of PowerPoints, which, as you know, can be the core structure around which online learning is built. And so at least if they've got that in place, they're a step closer. And so that, I think, for any emerging franchisor, it's got to be documented. You've got to think about documenting some training for every employee, whether it's in a manual or on a PowerPoint, and then really look toward the future to be able to modify PowerPoints and migrate them into an e-learning program. And of course, just webinars for training.
Yeah.
are
Portable.
very easy to do. Record them and make them available.
Well, in as you were saying, I feel like you're talking about, when we're talking about the training manuals and the operation manuals, those are really the foundational building blocks.
Yes.
And if you have those things, you can build off of those and make more engaging e-learning courses. Or maybe you say, hey, this is a really great section right here, but it's hard to interpret what they're doing as they're reading it. This would be a great video-based course.
Yes,
And
yes.
and you need those building blocks, because the building blocks are all of the things that we have to train on. Then
Yeah.
we've got to build the training on all of those things. So what a great answer. And that's a way to look.
And I do tell our clients that video is the gold standard. There's the gold standard, which is homegrown, like you're doing with your iPhone.
Yeah.
Which, depending on who's behind the iPhone, it could be really not usable, or it could be usable.
Yeah.
And, things like light and sound are essential. And that, for example, one of our clients early on had already produced a large handful of videos for how to cook the food in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And they were really great. That was, I don't think that was on a phone at that point.
Right, okay.
It was a real video camera, and someone had obviously done some editing.
Yes.
But if a franchisor or a new franchisor has that capacity, it's well worth doing that for training employees.
That is a great point, and a really great answer. We have seen technology evolve like everything else. And so, shooting on my cell phone 5 years ago would be very different than shooting on my cell phone today, right? Because a lot of people have the phones with the 3 different cameras, 3 different lenses on them now. And it's amazing how much cell phone technology has advanced over the years. But I mean, it's obviously a portable computer they're walking around with. But you could record an entire training series with a cell phone and a tripod and like a lapel microphone now. Right. And lighting is a bit of a trial and error thing. When I came on today, I had to figure out which lights could I put on to kind of give it, a pretty good view. But you don't necessarily need to go out and spend a huge amount of money on a budget for lighting with a ring light and all of those things. It's pretty impressive what we can do now with our handheld devices that we, have on our hip all the time.
Right. I had the pleasure of interviewing the director of operations from Firehouse Subs.
Yeah.
And asked the question, Meg Rose, and asked the question, what do you think about homemade videos versus professional? And she said, we use both.
Yeah.
Like, cool.
That mixture is a very common mixture these days. We've got a couple of our clients that I think did something very similar, where they did have professional videos that they had shot with a digital SLR and a boom mic and lighting and all of that. And then they do have the other ones where they just shoot themselves. And sometimes in training, if we're talking about, really understanding like the culture and the mission and the values, sometimes that's a great video for an executive to shoot as a talking head, something like this, because you're hearing about the core and the mission from the people that actually developed it. And something about that resonating, I think it actually does better when it's not a professionally shot video, because then they're like, this is a person like you and I. It's
a real person.
It's a real person. So
yeah.
So we love that as well. Well, some great answers there, and great ways to save money, of course, as well. So, and that in every emerging brand needs that. They need to be able to save money. They've spent a lot, building out their FDD. They paid a lot of lawyers along the way, and they need to have a little bit something left to put back in. So well, you do this. I know other people do it at your company as well, but you do a lot of training, design, and development services. What role does online training play when you're working with brands, and does the size of that brand matter? I know that repeats a little bit about what we talked about before, but what do you think? How does online play into it for you all?
Well, I think it really depends on the funding
Yes.
of the client. And I will say that a good portion of the work I specifically do are with the emerging brands. They're often a blank slate in terms of or their training has been rudimentary and it needs to be professionalized. So, and it might start with new franchisee training and then developing, very basic materials, their first materials for employee training. So I think online training is essential. And what I've seen is that it is really the more established or better funded new franchisors who can move into franchising and boom, go to online because they have the funding and a certain amount of comfort and tech savvy in the infrastructure that's comfortable with that investment and knows how to work with it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one. I mean, the comfort level of technology is a big factor because I talk to companies about this a lot, and the fact that, like, if you've got somebody on who's really comfortable creating course or shooting, I mean, Ken Jordan, who, does our content development services, was a client of ours before, but he has a really neat story about how many courses, he built in the first 2 months for his company. It's fairly amazing, but that's because Ken was tech savvy and he knew enough about the business that he could kind of be left alone and built out this really robust training program. Wow. And sometimes if you have someone like that, so the staff member, it really matters who you have on your staff, and are they comfortable? Are they tech savvy? The one thing I always forget about too is that we always think about, well, no, maybe I don't feel confident enough to shoot this video or to build this course. But what's interesting is when we do have units, we have a lot of youth available to us, and youth have grown up with cell phones in their hand. They came out of the womb with a cell phone in their hand, and they've always had YouTube, right? They've always had these things that were new to all of us. And sometimes you can really think about some neat ways to get training material built is having a contest at work where employees shoot videos. And then you get all of this training material you can pull from after the fact. And it's a neat way because some of these folks are building TikTok videos already, so let's leverage the people out there who do it well.
I love that idea of a contest.
Yeah.
Wow. And it'd be easy also to just give them a little, here are the 3 things that, are critical and what we're looking for. And
it's optional. No one has to do this, but if you'd like to, here are the prizes, or, and you're going to be famous for our brand. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, fabulous idea. Yeah.
Well, Marla, it has been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you and catching up with you before the interview as well. Thank you for joining us for 5 Franchising Questions. How does our audience get in touch with you and MSA Worldwide?
I can give you my email address to start with. It's mrosner, ROSNER, at MSAWorldwide.com. And that's our website. You can go to our website, check it out.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, Marla. We really appreciate it. It's been really fun catching up with you again. And just a reminder to our audience, thank you so much for watching this, for liking it and following it. And please make sure to follow us on our social channels, whether that's on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. Please follow. We really appreciate it. And we'll keep doing the shout outs and keep telling us what you're looking for. If you want us to interview somebody, we will gladly reach out to them and set it up. Take care. Thanks again, Marla.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.